technology will continue with or without you.
From a builder's perspective, nobody cares. Nobody's going to care. It's your job to convince them that it's important.
This device, I want this scenario that has to work from A to Z in 12 minutes. That's not realistic. You need to understand the limitations that the developers have, and they have to understand what you need.
So today the question is, how will XR shape the future of these different sectors? We have great experts and panelists today that we're going to talk about all these questions. So virtual reality is that full immersive tech. You put a headset on, you're in a new space. You're not in the real world. You're interacting with completely virtual environment. Mixed reality and augmented reality get confused a lot, but the big difference is really your interaction with the environment. Although those are kind of blending as we move forward, which some of the people today will probably talk about. But really mixed reality is having things that you can interact with in the physical space virtually. And your augmented reality is something that's just kind of overlaid. So if you've used Google Maps and you've put the phone up, you see the arrows and directions, that's really what that is.
I'm focused on AR and this idea of omnipresence experiences, right? So the idea that experiences exist in the world, and you as a viewer, you go to those experiences. You actually encounter those experiences out in the wild, rather than the current paradigm, which is information is delivered to you on a phone, on a screen, from this ubiquitous cloud that we exist in. We're saying that let's make that cloud tangible. Let's make that a physical experience. So we're really designing for presence. We're making data tangible. We want to link realities and ultimately have new ways for us to reimagine our engagement on a behavioral level.
There's really been a couple of unmet needs from these different groups that I've seen, and just to highlight a couple of them, from the institutional standpoint, from academia, from hospitals, researchers, I've really seen that there's a desire to use XR because it's a brand new technology, it's very exciting. They may even have funding for some of this hardware and technology, but they really don't have the skills or knowledge to put these into practice. Like your PI is not gonna take time to learn Unity in his very few hours to himself or herself. So this often gets passed on to the students who, curious and passionate as they are, don't often have the either technological support or funding support to learn these XR skills. And from the other end of the spectrum, looking at industry, they're really looking for these practical and profitable use cases of XR technologies that are
glued to our phones, how much we're glued to getting the information. When you don't have your phone for a day, you feel lost. So are we a part of the problem? Are we possibly part of the problem going forward, where we're adding more reason for people to be using these screens?
In the research setting, XR is really doing wonders in terms of making our research more ecologically valid and having studies that typically just stay in the lab actually go out into the real world.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why I got into AR, right? Because I see an opportunity to kind of break away from a device and having real world connections.
But thank you all for joining us. We've gone international, as we heard. We're in New Mexico States, we've got Ireland, and we've got Austria. So really awesome to have each of you here. I'm going to present Melinda first.
The gaming system, the headsets are still being seen as a gaming system, right? They're gaming for most people, and they're not seeing that educational value. So I think one of the things we have to work against is to get that educational value for headsets compared to people still seeing them as gaming. No, as you pointed out earlier, spending $2,000 on a phone, we all do it now, you know, no questions really asked. But if we're like, oh, $500 for a headset, going with, you know, the cheaper, I know Apple Pro's still way out there. People are like, oh, I don't know if it has that much value to it. So I think if we have authentications for the students, yeah, they can be fun in those experiences, and we want to make sure they're interactive.
In your experience, which way are we going? Do you see them coming together? And just love to hear any of your comments on that.
We have made research about learning, and with VR tennis, you improve your skills between 20 and 75%, depending on your age, on your skills, on your talent, and the time you invest. If you make a boring training, the learning is very low. If you gamify training, the learning is very high. So the more entertainment you bring into training and learning, the more efficient and effective you become.
So after doing a bit of research into this, found that the main challenges are to do with these four here. There's a little joke there. It's from a popular TV show here. So he's just saying, like, this cow's small because it's a toy beside us, and the other one's small because it's far away. And it's kind of like where things in a 3D space. We're reading and we're in an embodied position, so we're all different heights, and we look around and we move differently. So how does that work with the perspective towards the text? We looked at scale, the positioning of information as well, and then the aesthetic of it as well. So, you know, people who design books, they're very into fonts and what they're telling us. So this is a little clip from a project I did. It's back in 2022. I did this with the Aalto University in Helsinki. And this is a poem. So the user is walking through the poem, and the words of the poem are shaped. It's about trees. So it made them look like branches.
When we talk about VR and older adults specifically, why do we think this is a good fit? Well, first of all, older adults have unique needs, so they have, they need higher levels of care and more complex care. They also have accessibility issues, right? So traveling, oftentimes, especially as they may need more care, they have to coordinate with a caregiver, family member, or friend to also help with their travel needs. There's also kind of other limitations that they have. So, accessing long wait times and so forth. How do they get the timely care that they need? Well, VR is a technology that's very portable. Yes, there's a digital literacy component. I'll talk about how we've gone about mitigating that, and we co-design with the older adult. But it has potential. It's a tool that we can use. The other reason VR works well is because we've seen that the experiences you have in real life are very similar to that in VR. So that means, if I'm standing at the edge of a cliff and I'm looking down, my heart rate's going to go up. I'm going to feel a little sweaty. You're going to get that same experience physiologically in VR as well. So that really means that you can almost in a way create an experience that will feel very real for them, and they can do it from the comfort of their own home.
All this research validate how virtual reality stimulate neuroplasticity, stimulate the cognitive motor system, perception, action, and specifically this research validate how virtual reality improve motor function in upper limbs, combined, of course, with conventional treatment. Then there is another researcher and research who show the efficacy of virtual reality in attention and memory, function, executive, and spatial skills. 80%, between 70-80% of the stroke survivors suffer spatial issues, and nobody take care about it. So what we found that we can combine motor skills, cognitive skills, and also we can integrate all these specific function skills. Then, of course, VR and all the spectrum in virtual reality increase motivation, it's more fun, more engaged. Also, kinesophobia is one of the key things that we saw in a burn patient, where they were really like, I can't move, I don't want to move, and then we trick the brain and he starts to move.
Probably the most fascinating application of VR is to see if it can replace high fidelity simulation, the one that I showed you before in the video. And why do we want to do that? Because high fidelity simulation has some important limitations. First of all, space. Simulation centers require a lot of space. Just imagine to build up the same operating room in a simulation center. They need a lot of people, organizer, cleaner, scheduler, and then you need actors if you want to train a specific person on a specific task. And it can be very crowded around the mannequin, and not everybody is completely fully engaged, as we saw in the video. Another limitation is access. We saw this during the pandemic, but in general, simulation centers don't work after hours, On the left, you can see this distribution of simulation centers here in Canada, the red dots. And on the right, the blue dots represent the hospital in our country. Some of them very far from our simulation centers, difficult to access. Third, cost. Simulation centers can cost, to set up a simulation center can cost up to $1.6 million. Maintaining a simulation center can cost up to $300,000 per year. So in this regard, VR can be extremely helpful. First of all, you don't need to have a simulation center to build your operating room. You do it virtually, and then you just need a decent sized room to your proctors and your trainee, and you can run the scenario. And it looks like that VR is cheaper, also cheaper than high fidelity simulation. I'm not saying it is cheap, it's less expensive, about 1/3 of it, still very costly, at least to start with. And if you are wondering how, let's say, a critical crisis scenario will look like comparing to the video that I showed you before, this is what we built.
First time in this OR, I'm Andy, the RT. That's Dr. Solomon, the surgeon. Sophie's our scrub nurse today, and Olivia's circulating. You're in good hands.
Okay. Good morning, team. So I'm Brian. I'm one of the anesthesia residents. I'm just going to take a quick peek at the chart.
We put headsets on people all the time, and they either love it or they hate it. Do you have any reason or explanation of why you think such a divide? There isn't really usually a middle ground.
New technology, especially VR, put you outside your comfort zone. It takes time to understand what you are doing, and that might be the reason.
Meeting with doctors and neurologists, and they hear about the phones as a VR, and they have really not good experience. So now we need to change that. Now it's different. It's not a phone. It's another technology.
For us, we work with an older adult population, so how long can they wear it without having any motion sickness or other simulator sickness? Those are all important considerations, irrespective of the device that you use. Cost, Wi-Fi requirements. Not everyone has very high-speed internet, and you need that.
Again, I want to thank the whole ForceSpace team that I've been making baseball signs and talking with behind the scenes. I have no idea if I was on camera for any of that, so if I was, I apologize. To use at home, if you're watching it live or watching it later, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I hope it was everything that I got out of it and that you wanted. And for those of you in the room, thank you for attending. There is still food in the back, and I think some cold coffee if you want an iced coffee. And the next part is going to be open floor concepts. So no more talking unless you're talking to a person, yourself, and trying everything out.